Hello. The topic I'd like to discuss today is reparations. And I've kind of changed my view on it a couple different ways and a couple of different times. So I want to discuss some of that and what I was struggling with. Now, first, I used to believe, why should I pay anything that I had nothing to do with from 160 years ago? Then I started researching my family history a little more in depth. My family were part of the Underground Railroad. They were abolitionists, part of the anti-slavery societies. They were women suffragists. And I was looking at one couple in particular. My great-great-grandfather, Eli Townsend, and his wife, Abigail Mosher Wood, had siblings. They both had a sibling that also married each other. So Eli's sister, Elizabeth Townsend, married Abigail's brother, Joseph Mosher Wood. So Elizabeth and Joseph Mosher Wood, they moved to Fairfax County, Virginia, and started working in a school set up for what they called freedmen, which was freed slaves at the time. And this was 1865, and they started working there, trying to help educate the people that had been freed. These schools kind of opened up around the South at the time. They all kind of crumbled and fell apart in 1870 because there was a financial depression in 1870, and so the donations dried up. From that, I started thinking about freedom was given back to the people that were enslaved. But was that all that was taken from them? Because really, their homeland was taken, their home, their possessions, most of the time their families, their husbands, their wives, their kids, their grandkids, basically everything, their possessions. And for several generations, they were not allowed to have any of these things. They were not allowed to be educated. They were not allowed to own anything. Their families would be taken from them. So in a way, it's sort of like as if, let's say, some guy gets kidnapped and the kidnapper takes all the guy's possessions and burns his house down, and then he frees the guy that was kidnapped and says, okay, we're even. Well, no, they're not even. He owes him the house and all of his possessions. So just being freed doesn't make it all even. Much less, if you've been held back, how are you supposed to compete with people that have had generations of owning everything and being educated and having businesses and farms and all this stuff? So you're supposed to just start out with nothing, have your own farm or your own business or whatever. So in that sense, I think the people at the time were owed way more than what they were given. But it's been 160 years since then, so it gets way more complicated. Who should be paying this? It technically wasn't the U.S. government that was behind slavery. They tried to stay sort of out of it. As a republic, as a union of states, they tried to just mediate and stay neutral and let the states decide. That's why you had the Missouri Compromise, where the northern states wouldn't have slavery and the southern states would. That's why in 1856, the Democrat Stephen Douglas passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act. That was seen as a breach of the Missouri Compromise because it would allow each state to decide on its own whether it be a free state or a slave state. The idea being that Kansas would be probably a slave state and Nebraska to the north would be a free state. But since you're allowing each state to decide for itself, it allows for slavery to expand to Nebraska, which would be beyond the Missouri Compromise of 1820. So you could say, well, maybe it should be the slave states. But really, not everybody in those states owned slaves. So just because they allowed it, should they be the ones that pay? You could also look at it from the two-party system. The Republican Party was founded as an abolitionist party, as opposed to the Democratic Party, which was a pro-slavery party. The Confederacy were the Democrats. So you could say, well, why not have the Democratic Party pay the reparations? They were behind slavery. It wasn't the Republicans. But then there's still the problem of, it's even more complicated than that, because there were white slaves and black slave owners. Even the Native Americans owned slaves. So how do you distinguish who actually should be paying into the pool of money that gets sent to the people that have been harmed? And how does the distance and time play into this? Imagine this scenario. My fourth great-grandfather was shot and killed in Ohio. Should I be able to get some sort of monetary compensation from the family of the man that shot and killed him? that happened in 1816. At what point do you say, that was between the people at that time and it should have been handled then? I mean, I guess the best case scenario would be, you'd have to prove that you're a descendant of a slave, which would be extremely difficult in a lot of cases. And you'd have to prove which family were the perpetrators against your family. Who owes you? You'd have to research the families and the descendants of the people that were actually the slave owners and say, that family is the one that owes my family because they were the ones that committed this crime against us. You can't just randomly take compensation from anyone. It has to be, something like this is going to have to be targeted to the people that actually owe it. So leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. I guess I'm still sort of in a position where I feel like it should be owed, but I'm not sure how practically it could be paid. Hit the like button and subscribe. I appreciate it. Thanks.